The Senate is organized a little bit differently, as hopefully you know by now. Hopefully this isn't all brand new to you. So we'll start off basically talking about the same things. First, the organization. There are 100 senators. There's 100 senators. There are 50 states. Each state, excuse me, each state gets 2 votes, 2 senators. 2 times 50 is 100, so we have 100 senators. They serve 6-year terms. 6-year terms. So if somebody's elected in the year 2000, they're going to be up for re-election in 2006. Then if they win again, they're going to be up for re-election in 2012. And then if they win re-election there, they're going to be up for re-election in 2018. So every 6 years, they run for office. So as you can see, members of the House run 3 times for every 1 time the senator has to run for re-election, because they have to run every 2 years. And like the House of Representatives, there are no term limits. You can run for the Senate as many times as you want. And once again, like the House, there are people who have run for 40 years. They've been in the Senate. I think Robert Byrd had the record for number of times he got elected to the Senate. Maybe it was Strom Thurmond. There are some people who've served for a really, really long time. Again, in terms of representation, there are two senators for each state, and what it means is that every 2 years, 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election. So what that means is, so for example, in the year 2000, 1/3 of all the senators were up for re-election. Then in 2002, 1/3 were up for re-election. Then in 2004, 1/3 of them were up for re-election. So every 2 years, 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election, right? So if somebody's elected in 2006, they don't have to run again until 2012, right? But people who were elected in 2008 are going to be up for re-election in 2014. People who were elected in 2010 are going to be up for re-election in 2016. So 1/3 of the Senate is up for re-election every 2 years. So whereas people can vote all their members of the House of the American people could go to the polls in 2012 and vote out every single member of the House of Representatives. Say, we want to get rid of all of you. You're all history. And they can vote everybody out and bring in 435 new people. But if in 2012 the American people are fed up with the Senate, they can only vote out 1/3 because 2/3 aren't even up for re-election in 2012. Okay? There are certain powers that are unique to the United States Senate. First, while the president is the one who's allowed to go ahead and negotiate treaties, so for example, if the president wants to negotiate a treaty with Russia to reduce nuclear weapons, the president can go ahead and do that on his own. He can make whatever deal with the Russians he wants to. But in order for it to come into effect, in order for it to become law, the president has to bring back the treaty that he's negotiated with the Russians to the United States Senate, not the House, just the Senate. And they have to give what's called in the Constitution their advice and consent. Their advice and consent. They advise and consent on treaties. And it requires a 2/3 majority. A 2/3 majority has to approve the treaty that the president has negotiated. So the president can go and negotiate whatever deal he wants. If it's a crappy deal, then if he brings it back to the Senate and says, hey, look, I came up with this treaty with the Russians, the Senate's going to be like, hey, look, you know what, that's a crappy deal. We're not going to approve it. So although presidents can negotiate whatever treaty they want, they have to get the approval of 2/3 of the Senate for it to become law. The Senate also approves appointments of top officials. If somebody's going to be nominated as an ambassador, if somebody's going to be nominated to the head of a department, if you look on your lecture notes, you'll see the word SCOTUS. That actually stands for Supreme Court of the United States. SCOTUS. Sounds like a disease, kind of, but you don't worry about that. SCOTUS. If a president nominates somebody to be an ambassador, the head of a department, or a member of the Supreme Court, the Senate holds a hearing and decides whether or not they approve or disapprove of the appointment. If they approve, and they approve, then the person can be appointed. If they don't approve, then the president can't appoint them. He can only do it if Congress approves it. Now, in the case of appointments, it only takes a simple majority, right? A simple majority is fine. Lastly, if a president or a judge is impeached, then the trial takes place in the United States Senate. The trial takes place in the Senate. So, for example, when President Clinton was impeached in 1998, 1997, 98, in any case, when he was impeached, the House of Representatives determined that he had done enough things that they felt that it was that there should be a trial in the Senate. And then what happened was the people who had charged him with wrongdoing in the House came to the Senate, and they said, this is why we think there should be a trial, and this is why we think he should be removed from office. Then the president gets to have his people come in and say, this is why we disagree. Now the senators, what the senators do is they just sit there with their hands folded and listen. They are like the jury. When it's all said and done, they don't ask questions or do anything. They just go ahead and they listen, and then at the end they vote. If it goes ahead, if 2/3 of them vote to remove somebody from office, then he or she is removed from office. But anything less than 2/3, and they stay in office. So when President Clinton was impeached, everybody knew he was not going to be removed from office because half the Senate were Democrats, and they weren't going to vote to remove President Clinton from office, especially when he was very popular. So impeachment happens in the House with a simple majority, but to remove a president from office requires something more than that. Remove him in the Senate takes a 2/3 majority. Now, when the Senate holds a trial, whenever you have a trial, you've got people presenting evidence in favor or against. You need somebody to sort of be the person in charge, the judge. Well, in the case of an impeachment of a president, the judge would be the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the head guy of the Supreme Court. He'll preside over the impeachment, and so that's the way it works. Now, in terms of the method of election, well, as you may recall, it used to be that members of the Senate were elected indirectly. That is, we would vote, citizens would vote for their members of the state legislature. So the legislature in Sacramento, if we're from California, not members of the House of Representatives, representatives for the state. So we have state government, we have federal government. It would be the people that we elected for the legislative branch in the state. They would get to select the senators, right? So we refer to that as an indirect election. We're not, so if this is us citizens and there's our senator, we didn't get to go ahead and vote for our senator. We get to vote for the member of the state legislature, and they get to vote for the senator. So it's an indirect election rather than a direct election, where we're voting directly for them. But with the passage of the 17th Amendment, we changed that. And now we vote directly for our senators as well. So we vote directly for our senators, and we vote directly for members of the House of Representatives. Next, we'll move on to the 4 primary functions of Congress.